Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me for the live today. I think many of you probably know where I'm located. I'm right on the coast of Mississippi, right on the Gulf of Mexico. And that hurricane that came ashore last night, that was over around Morgan City, Louisiana. We got some rain and a little bit of wind from it, but we didn't get too much. As you see, some rain blew into my arena. Wasn't too bad. A few trees around, nothing too bad. We got lucky. I haven't seen many reports yet of what happened over there. I am sure they had some damage. I don't live here at the ranch. I actually live 2 blocks from the beach. And normally on my way up here, I'll ride around the beach coming up here. And I couldn't this morning because the water was still over the road at the beach. So we're all good. Really no damage to speak of here. A little wet. It'll take a day or so to dry out, but wasn't bad at all. We were really lucky. Today I'm on Hank. If you don't know Hank, Hank is the one that I show in Cow Horse. Have him qualified for the NRCHA Celebration of Champions in February. Plan on showing him there. And figured I'd sit on him for today's live, answer your questions. I really don't have a specific topic in mind this morning. It was really too wet to get anything done. I still need to go out back and check all my fences and make sure I don't have any trees on them. But I can count cows and count horses, and I can see everybody's where they belong. So we're in good shape for now. And I figured I'd start off by talking just kind of about me, myself, and kind of what sets me different from other trainers on YouTube and on social media. I've been training for a long time, probably 30 years or so. And I don't start near as many horses as I used to. We still start some. And most of the horses that I have are to take to show. I'll work some horses with some issues. There's always horses with that kind of thing, but I've won several world top 10s in a couple of different classes, and I take what I learned training horses up to that level and apply that to, it looks like he's got a fly bothering him, and I apply that to every horse that comes in. Horses that come in to start, horses that come in with a problem, and use what I learned training horses up to that level and apply that to every horse. There was a time where in my training, really everything was about me and what could I go win. And it reached a point where it was like, I've won everything that I had set out to win. Now what? And actually, I almost quit training horses at that point. It was like I accomplished everything. Now what do I go accomplish? And kind of my perception changed at that point. Instead of what could I win, that more became taking every horse that I got and making that horse become as good as that horse could be. And that really changed my perception a lot. And now instead of picking the couple best horses I can get and going and winning whatever I can win, now I take not everything that's sent to me, not everything that people message me about, but most horses, and do the best I can with each one of those horses. And I think in a lot of ways that's even more gratifying than when I was trying to win world titles, because I can take whatever horse is sent to me, and I want to make that individual horse the best that horse can be. And once in a while I get horses like Hank, which I've had him for a long time. He doesn't belong to me. A lot of people ask that question. Doesn't belong to me. He belongs to Melissa. And he is 12 now. I've had him, I think he was about 4 or maybe just turned 5 when I first got him, and I've had him ever since. He was still trying to run off and buck me off when I got him. He had a fair amount of training before, but he still had a long ways to go, and turned out to be a really fantastic horse. Probably one of the best horses I've ever had in training. So if you've got any questions about horse training in general, or me, where I come from, my background, put them in the comments, and let's talk and answer some of those questions. I have him out today so that we can talk about more of the upper level training stuff. I know there's fewer people out there that are looking for that upper level stuff, but on the other side, I'm practically the only one that I know of on social media and YouTube that really offers this stuff up, this information up. I believe that just like I want every horse to be as good as they can be, I want your horses to be as good as they can be. And I have some stuff behind a paywall on Patreon, but for the most part, everything that I do is out there for you to see and learn from. Any questions so far?
Yeah, you have a few training questions, but one about the subject you're talking about is everyone wants to hear the glory, but can you talk about roadblocks on your journey, both real and in your mind?
That's a really good question. Everybody talks about the glory, talk about some of the roadblocks, real and in your mind. Really good question. Good question, Dusty. Thank you. I think probably most of the roadblocks for me have been in my mind. And I used to be the highs, the good things were really high, and the lows when things went bad were really low. And it's hard to maintain those emotions. You have to enjoy the highs, and the lows you want to work to make better, but you can't place all your success on those highs. There's going to be lows. Lows happen pretty regular. And I've got a saying around here to the point to where people start imitating me. I say it'll be all right. And if you're not from the South, that's kind of a Southern way of putting things together. It will be all right comes out to it be all right, and that's kind of just kind of the point of view that I take. And it'd be all right. We just work through it. And I've shown it all at all the big world shows. Really exciting. Get really nervous. It's really fun. I've had some really bad runs. One I'll tell you about. I was showing at the NRBC, which if you're not familiar, that's the National Reining Horse Association Reining Breeders Classic. Probably one of the biggest shows they have. And I don't remember what number draw, huge open classes. And I ran after Jason Van Landingham, and he put out this just outrageous score. And it turned out that he won the NRBC that year on that horse, and I had to ride after him. And I went in and zeroed on my first maneuver. Just had a brain blockage, and just happened. And right there, one of the biggest stages I've ever been on, and just zeroed, and I spun too many times. That happens. You can't let those things get you too far down. It was good experience. I went back since then and had a good it was a good learning experience. I went back since then and did much better. So those highs happen, those lows happen, and you just have to roll with them. I remember probably one of the biggest things that stick in my head, and it really it's when you think about the big picture, it's really minor. I was running for a world title and sitting in first place in the world in points by a pretty fair amount. And the last show of the year was in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. And the person that was in second place was in, I think, Pennsylvania or New Jersey or someplace up the East Coast. And the only way that she could come down and pass me in points is to come down and beat me on two horses. And what that was going to do, that was going to dilute the money enough so that if she beat me, that would put her ahead. So all I had to do was beat one horse, and I would have won a world title that year. And did my reining pattern. The horse was very consistent, always ran the same pattern every time. Last maneuver was a stop and back up. Stop, the horse turned to the right a little bit. I caught it and then backed up. All I needed was a 0 maneuver score, and I minus half that maneuver because of that one little bobble. And that put me beating her on one horse, tying her on the other horse, and she ended up beating me out money for the year. That was probably one of my biggest lows. That one maneuver, that one minus half maneuver, cost me a world title, and just one of them lows. And I still think about it. And you will rarely see me stop and back up, and that horse not back up straight in a show. That's one thing I drill on after learning that. Just the horse was real light to my hand, and when I picked my hand up, she started to spin. She started to roll back, what she started to do. So there's always ups, there's always downs. I do lessons and video lessons with people all the time that are going through those ups and downs. I still do some, but not as big, just because I've done so much. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've had to work on, and probably the biggest thing I see a lot of other people struggle with. Other questions?
Yes. Who are Hank's best friend horses, and what is his show name?
Hank's show name is Henry's Surprise. If you have access to AQHA records or National Reining Horse Association, National Rein Cow Horse Association, you can look him up. His daddy was Jerry Lee Surprise out of, I believe, a Hollywood Dunnet mare, if I remember right. But he is by Jerry Lee Surprise. He is the only Jerry Lee Surprise cow horse that I know of. There could be others, but he's the only one I know of. And his his best friend here is Lucy. Lucy is 24 years old. She's the oldest horse here. They're like brother and sister. They fight like brother and sister. They act like brother and sister. She's 24. He's 12. And it is funny to see them together. He just torments her constantly, but when she's had enough, she will put him in his place. It's pretty funny to watch.
All right. Training question.
All right, training question.
Can you talk about riding the transition from trot to canter?
Riding the transition from trot to canter. Talk about riding the transition from trot to canter. That is something that I have had to work on a lot. To ride the transition from trot to canter well, you need to engage that horse's back end, have his front end light, and he needs to push off in the back to canter off. Most people, and something that I have struggled with too, is not riding through the transition. So if I'm going to canter him off, I'll just show you this. It's actually outside leg back, score over for the right lead, smooch and ride off. What a lot of people do is as soon as you feel that horse start to elevate, you lose your contact with your leg and you don't ride through the transition. So what I try to do is I ride not just through the transition, but I ride past the transition. When I put my outside leg on and I smooch, I'm going to keep my outside leg on and I'm going to hold it there and ride forward until we have maintained or established some rhythm in the lope. So I might have my outside leg on for 3, 4, 5 strides, depending on what that takes. And that helps me to ride through that transition. That's hard to do. And in reining horses, you don't ever trot, so you do a lot of walk to lope transitions, and in there it's even harder because you have to push harder. So ride through the transition, ride past the transition. Don't take your leg off and stop riding the transition until at least 3, 4, or 5 strides after you've established the lope. Another question?
I have a question. How do you get a horse to get over cancer anxiety? Like he will breathe very fast and rush, and he'll go completely stiff neck and can move his body. I can get to move his body at a walk, jog, and extended trot.
Okay, how to get a horse over a canter anxiety. The horse is stiff in the neck, stiff in the shoulders. Um, he rides nice at a walk, trot, and extended trot. Most of the time, and I haven't seen your horse move. Most of the time, it's not really canter anxiety. It's a balance issue. He is anxious about the canter, but what causes that anxiousness is his balance. He's not engaged enough in the back end. He's not light enough in the front end. And if you think about it from the point of horses' front feet are pulling, horses' back feet are pushing. And with horses that are not engaged good in the back and round good in the front, it's almost like the front and the back are wanting to travel at different speeds. It's like the front's doing most of the pulling and the back's trying to catch up, or the back is doing most of the pulling and the front can't, or most of the pushing and the back can't go fast enough. So usually that type of anxiety is caused from a balance issue. And what I would suggest is get him in a big wide open space, get him into a canter, however it takes to get him in it, and work on balance. Work on moving the shoulders over. Work on leg yielding out. Work on counter bending in the circle. That's a big deal, is counter bending to help get balance. Because if it's the outside shoulder that's out, you'll get that shoulder in by counter bending the neck in the canter. So think of what is causing that anxiety, and it is most likely a balance issue. And then if you feel where his balance is not good, you can fix the canter.
I have a horse that belongs to a team that is good to ride out, kind and friendly, but he is extremely green sour. He will rubberneg and run through his shoulder, crow hop, and suck back.
Okay, horse is ridden by a team that is very ring sour. Um, so I get some of those in to fix those issues, and they're they're not easy to fix. It's usually caused by the horse doing something, and the horse did something, it rattled the rider, and the rider stopped, or the rider walked, or the rider made whatever the horse was doing easier. And the horse was like, oh, well, all I have to do is do this thing, and I won't have to work hard. Or do this thing, and I don't have to ride out in the woods for 3 hours. Or do this thing, and I don't have to lope circles in the arena. That's usually, again, it could vary horse to horse, but that's typically with this situation. It's usually that situation. The horse has learned a behavior so that it can either get out of work or do the thing that it wants to do. Usually the fix to that is just keep riding it through whatever it's doing, which is not easy, especially if it's something that can be dangerous and get you hurt, like bucking or running off or something like that. We have some techniques that we use to help keep that under control. We will, when the horse wants to lope or run off, or if the horse wants to run off, we basically will let it run off in a circle about this big. So he can go as fast as he wants to, but we're going to go stay right there in that corner. Usually, the worst thing you can do is try to stop whatever the horse is doing. Think about if you take a toddler to the store and the toddler is laying out on the floor throwing a fit, a temper tantrum over a piece of candy. The worst thing you can do is give it the piece of candy. It's hard, but sometimes you just let them throw the temper tantrum and they figure out that they're not going to get what they want. Similar with a horse. You ride the horse through the temper tantrum till he figures out that that temper tantrum is a whole lot of work and it's not really getting me what I want. So maybe let's try something else. So that is usually the fix to that type of situation, but it can be dangerous. So be careful. Um, if the horse is doing some things that you're not comfortable handling, you might want to take him to a trainer or a professional and have them help you work through that. In my opinion, what are the hardest horses to train? So I had somebody ask me one time, they said, I see you riding all different breeds of horses, all different types of horses, cow horses, running horses, thoroughbreds, Arabians, you name it, I'll ride it. And they asked me, of all of those horses, which do you prefer? And my answer was a good one. So I don't really care what breed it is. I don't. I like riding cow horses. I like riding reining horses. I like riding Arabians. I like riding different breeds, doing different things. I'm probably least like riding draft horses. I don't like the drafty feeling that they have, but I will ride one once in a while. So as far as a breed or a type or anything like that, um, there's really no breed that I will say I will not ride that breed. Because there's good and not so good in every breed. I'm not gonna eliminate every breed. Some of them's pretty fun to ride. Some of them's different. Some of them's nice.
When showing your large circles, where is your hand position? I've seen some riders almost touching the horse's head.
So when showing the large circles, where is my hand position? That's a really good question. And the answer is going to be apply to all your maneuvers, not just the large circles. So every time I'm showing every horse, no matter what the horse, no matter what the maneuver, my body in my hand is going to be wherever that horse performs best. Normally, when I'm riding my circles on him, my hand is down here. I have him on a short rein because if he he gets scared if you ride him on a totally slack rein. He kind of gets worried. So I'll ride him on a little bit shorter rein. He shows best that way. That's what I'm after, whatever they show best in. And I will push him pretty hard with my legs. There is no set place that says your hand should be here, your hand should be here. You rarely see me do this, mostly because I'm a bigger person, and when I do this, it upsets the horse's balance. I usually stay back, and sometimes I actually get my shoulders back even further than what most people do to get my upper body over the horse's back end. It's all a matter of however that horse shows best. Don't get caught up in those little things like that. I just taught a clinic last weekend, a ranch riding clinic, and a lot of the questions in ranch riding is things like, should I sit? Should I stand? Should I post? Should I run my hand forward? Should I keep my hand back? And really, the judge don't care. The judge is judging the horse. So you show that horse doing whatever your horse shows best at.
With the storm having gone through, can you talk about how important training is for the horse with emergency preparedness, trailering, going to other barns, paperwork, etc.?
Okay, so with the storm just going through, talk about emergency preparedness with the horse. So my emergency preparedness is going to be different than most people that just have one or two or three horses. There is no way I can get all of the animals off the property here. So all of my emergency preparedness is geared towards basically always being prepared. We're on a full backup generator here. We're on well water. I have chainsaws on hand. We have feed on hand. We are totally prepared to be self-sufficient here for weeks. I wasn't at this facility. I was training horses when Hurricane Katrina hit. There was a lot of publicity about Hurricane Katrina in Louisiana, not a lot here. I was with the sheriff's department then. It was bad here. Our 911 system went underwater. We had no emergency personnel radio contact. The Red Cross help that had been sent down to stage, all the Red Cross vehicles were underwater. There was no outside help at all. I mean, none for about a week here. No Red Cross, no anything, no ambulance service. Police calls. We had line of sight communication on handheld radios. We got down a pretty good system of relaying messages to different parts of the county. Uh, it was pretty bad. So everything here with my emergency preparedness is to be ready to be here, hunker down, self-sufficient, long-term for weeks. Our power was out during Katrina for 23 days, I believe. Uh, we could get water, we can get feed. We were fine. When Katrina hit, I had 14 horses in training. 7 of them were stallions. At the time, I was still training stallions. I called owners trying to get horses sent home, and not a single horse left. We had some damage, but it wasn't anything that we couldn't manage. So my emergency preparedness here basically is to have a facility that's set up to be self-sufficient for weeks at a time, which we are. Power goes out, that kind of stuff, we barely notice here. Most people, their emergency preparedness might be a little bit more geared towards evacuation. If that's the case, always make sure you have current coggins on your horse, because if you evacuate to any facility, they're going to ask to see a coggins. In most evacuation situations, there will be a horse arena that opens up, an arena, and there are a lot of places they use it for staging for emergency response that you can evacuate to. There was some pretty bad stories about evacuating after Katrina. If you do evacuate, you need to bring everything your horses need for as long as you're going to be there. And depending on the severity of the storm, I mean, that could be a lot of food, a lot of hay. Because don't plan on being able to get anything when you get there. You might be able to evacuate to a friend's place. That's a better situation if you have that available. There are some horse travel sites that you might be able to evacuate to. Paperwork wise, always have your coggins ready. That will be asked no matter where you go. Emergency situation, you're probably not going to be able to get a health certificate pulled. Most places, that's not a big deal in the evacuation situation. If you've got dogs, cats, that's going to put in some variables with evacuating with your horses. A lot of that's going to depend on your situation. Elevation wise, we have no flooding risk here. My house is 23 feet above sea level. The house I was living in when Katrina hit was 21 feet above sea level, and I had 2 feet of water in the house. So flood area, you got to take that into account. The other thing you have to take into account is where you're going to evacuate to. I've lived here all my life. We've set out every storm that's been here. Camille, Frederick, Elena, Katrina, all of them. My parents were here when Betsy hit. So it's kind of, we just kind of have a system here. If you are new to a hurricane area, talk to people that are used to it. We see new people here that some of them over prepare, some of them under prepare, but you got to be prepared. Main thing is coggins. Bring all the supplies you're going to need for as long as you're gone. Another question?
Yes. Do you find occasionally there are horses that work better for some than others?
Do I find occasionally that there are horses that work better for some than others? Absolutely. There are horses that work better for some owners. Different people have different personalities. Different horses have different personalities. And I tell the people all the time that when you are looking for a horse, think of looking for that horse almost like a dating process. Get to know the horse. If you don't get along, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the horse. But it doesn't mean that you have to adjust, and the situation that I see most often is the people expect the horse to adjust, and that's not going to happen. You have to be the one adjusting. You can't have a conversation with a horse and say, look, in order for this relationship to work, we need to work on these things. Can't have that conversation. It's all on you. You have to do the adjusting and adjust to the horse. And if it's not a fit, it's just not a fit. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the horse. Uh, Maybe you have a friend that's having a similar situation and y'all might trade horses. I've actually seen that happen a lot. And both horses are happier, both owners are happier. Uh, Not every horse is a good fit for everybody. There are certain things that I like in a horse that's for me. A lot of the things that I like, a lot of people aren't going to like. So it's just a matter of when you're working on your situation with the horse and you buy that horse, doesn't mean you're married with that horse for the rest of your life. If it's not working out, sell it and try another horse. Uh, People think, oh, that's so mean, that's so cruel. What about that horse? What's going to happen when I sell it and it goes down the road? My thinking is that's mean and that's cruel for you to keep that horse, because if the arrangement isn't working, you're not going to have the connection with the horse. Is the horse going to just get thrown out in the pasture and not touched very much? If every time you go out to the horse, you feel threatened by the horse, that's not a good situation. You're going to create worse problems with the horse, which is what I normally see. When it's not a match and the horse gets worse because of what the owner is doing. I way see more often situations where people think they're doing the right thing by keeping the horse because they're worried about what is going to happen to the horse when it goes down the road. And I can see I'm worried about what is happening to the horse now. So, yeah, there's always situations where it just don't work.
Okay. I've heard several local trainers talk about the Lope being the most emotional gait for a horse. You talk a lot, and I love it, about getting the mind right. Do you feel it's an emotional gait?
Do I feel the Lope is an emotional gait for the horse? No, I really don't. Uh, I, a trained horse, I don't think it's emotional. A good horse, a trained horse, they don't lope scared. Uh, I don't think of it that way. If I'm going to say any gait or movement is more emotional on the horse than anything else, I would say it's the backup. Um, I've really never heard of the lope as being a more emotional gait for the horse than anything else. Uh, a lope is just mechanics. You have the mechanics of the walk, mechanics of a trot, mechanics of a lope. Now, if the body mechanics isn't right, like I talked about earlier, the horse has anxiety in the lope. That's not really an emotional problem. That's a mechanic problem. That's a body mechanics problem. So, no, I don't think of the lope being more emotional than any other gait. I don't buy into that.
Tim, can you speak a little bit about tendon and ligament injuries in horses and how you try to prevent it and if you have a rehab plan for horses with those type of
A
injuries?
really good question. Let's talk about tendon and ligament injuries. Uh, do I have a rehab plan? So I've been lucky, fortunate. I don't really know how to put it. I have had very, very few tendon and ligament issues. In fact, I had one pulled tendon, and that horse pulled the tendon out in the pasture. It wasn't even related to riding. One bow tendon. I can't think of another tendon injury other than a cut tendon from doing something stupid the horse shouldn't have been doing. I really think that my program of the 50%, 70%, and 90% days is a big part of why I don't have tendon problems. I think the fact that I give the horses as much turnout as I can is a big part of why I don't have the tendon problems. You ride a horse hard and put him in a stall, the tendons are going to tighten up. I think that's a big part of why I better knock on wood somewhere, that I typically don't have those problems. Another thing that I have done one or two videos on, I think the last video I did was last summer about this. Uh, Anytime a horse has a 90% day and some 70% days, we ice the front legs. We put ice boots on, and that helps the tendons. It's basically like an athlete getting an ice bath after a workout. Um, and a lot of it just has to do with what our routine is. I just don't stress the tendons that much. And another side of that is, as you see with him, I don't have any boots on him. I think that riding with booted up every time you ride is detrimental to the horse. I only put boots on if I'm starting a spin. I will put boots on just so they don't knock themselves and be a problem with not wanting to spin because it hurts. But I only boot up a horse on 70 and 90% days. I do not boot up a horse on 50% days. My thinking is, and you could probably make an argument whether this is really correct or not, I don't want to always ride in boots and those horses' legs get accustomed to always riding in boots. I believe there is some benefit to doing some basic loping, basic trotting, and not being booted, and the body being used to that. I think that is a big part of why I generally don't have many leg issues. Um, I believe if you always boot, you're creating a dependency, and then you're creating a potential for a problem. Um, that's my thing. Better knock on wood that I hadn't jinxed myself, but I really think it has a lot to do with the way I do my 50, 70, 90% days. We do ice on 70 and 90% days, and I don't always ride with boots. I think that's a big part of it too.
Okay. How many different patterns in reining prior to working the cow?
How many different patterns in reining prior to working the cow? In cow horse, there's a lot. I can't remember. I want to say 20 something. I don't remember how many there are. I don't try to learn the patterns. Now, NRHA reining, you say we're going to go ride pattern 7. I know what pattern 7 is. I think there's 14 of those patterns, I believe. I pretty much know all those patterns. Cow horse, I don't know all those patterns. They all have the same characteristics. They're always going to have circles on one end, circles on the other end. In reining, you always roll back after your stops. In cow horse, you always spin after your stops. Uh, in reining, if there's slides, if you're stopping on the sides, you always roll back to the wall. There's just certain characteristics. And usually, once I start a pattern, I'll say in my head, too big, one small change, too big, one small change, run downs down the side, spin left, right. And that's kind of how I'll memorize the patterns. And it's just a matter of just, they're all similar. I just get used to them. There's most of the stock horse shows that we go to, the reining and the cow work is 2 separate classes. You go in, you do your reining pattern, your dry work pattern, you come out, and then later you'll do your cow pattern. In the more upper level, National Rein Cow Association, as long as it's not an aged event, those are different. You're going to go in, you're going to run your reining pattern, and then you're going to immediately call for your cow and do your cow horse pattern. There's a little bit different strategy involved in there. You have to make sure when you ride your reining pattern, you still have enough horse left to do your cow work. So you have to know your horse, and you have to plan a little strategy.
Can you explain how which hand you use when loping a circle changes the balance and how you sit when one-handed?
Okay, explain one-handed and how changing the hand changes the balance. I got split reins here. If I was riding in Ramels are required for National Rein Cow Horse. The Ramels will be held this way. I have almost all my students ride in Ramels for everything. And the reason being for that If you're riding in split reins, people have a tendency to do this, and it shifts their body around. In Ramels, you have your hand up like you're holding an ice cream cone, and you're able to get a little more square. So all of my beginner riders show in Ramels. Sometimes we'll swap to split reins for certain things. As far as which hand, I have all of my students ride in their non-dominant hand. If they're right-handed, they ride with their left hand. If they're left-handed, they ride with their right hand. The reason being is your balance typically is in your dominant hand. If you're riding your horse, you're right-handed and you're riding with your right hand, that is where your balance is. You're stronger there. You're going to pull more there, and that hand is going to do a lot. When you swap to riding with your non-dominant hand, you don't have as much strength there. You don't have as much balance in that hand, and that kind of forces you, it kind of forces you to use more of your core for your balance. So I have all of my students riding their non-dominant hand. And don't switch back and forth. The only time they switch is if they're working a gate or an obstacle where they have to swap to work the obstacle. It takes a little bit to get used to riding with your non-dominant hand, but in the end, everybody that I have do that is better off for it.
How do you slow down the lope? I've been just letting my mare canter on a loose rein until she slows down. Is there more I should do?
How to slow down the lope. She's been letting her mare lope until she wants to slow down. Is there more you should do? So there is a lot that you can do, and a lot of that is going to depend on the type of horse that you're riding and the event that you're working towards. Working my reining horses, we're going to run pretty big, pretty fast in our big circles, and we're going to slow down and go into our small circles. I don't always practice steering when we slow down. Steering and slow down is two different things. So we'll lope a big fast and we'll lope a big slow. I generally want that horse to slow down with my body movement. So we'll ride more and then relax more when we slow down. My body position will change a little bit. With him, I actually ride back more when I'm doing my fast, and then I'll relax more when I'm doing my slow. I'll sit up more when the slow. To get the horse more locked into that, what I will do is whatever my body is going to do to go from fast to slow, I will over exaggerate that. I'll do that movement. I'll count 1 Mississippi in my head, and then I'll use my hands to pull the horse down to a trot or to a walk or something like that, so that the horse realizes, okay, when body changes, we're going to slow down. And that helps the horse connect your body movement with that slowdown. I'm not a lot of clinicians will teach that, just let the horse lope until they want to slow down. You can do that to a point, but some horses you're going to get in trouble with that. There are some horses that I get on a horse and I know we're going to lope about 3 circles, and I know that horse is going to slow down. He ain't going to slow down. If I ask him to go fast and I keep riding fast, he's going to keep going fast, and he will keep getting faster. So you have to be careful with that, with the horse that you're riding. I teach a slow down cue, and I will use that slow down cue to teach the horse to relax and go slower.
Is teaching a reining spin different than a turn on the haunches?
Is teaching a reining spin different than a turn on the haunches? It is a little bit different. The body mechanics is the same. The mental aspect is different. Turn on the haunches is usually with a little bit of rhythm, but much slower. A spin, you want a little bit of zip to it. So, same body mechanics. My reining horses know that the fast spin is the reward. That's kind of the difference. I ask him to spin, He gets fast, we're going to walk out. That's the reward. There's several different training techniques to get there. We'll trot in, we'll trot out. So my reining horses know that when you spin fast, you're going to get a reward. The little bit different thing that's different mechanically is, in order to spin faster, I need more push from the back end than just a simple turn on the haunches. So if you're going to do a turn on the haunches, your cue is normally up here right behind the girth, a little bit of rein to create the shoulder movement over. My spin, because I want engagement in the back end, I will rein, but my cue for me, not every reining trainer does it, my cue for a spin is actually back here. We'll rein and back here. That tells the horse push, and that tells the horse go faster. Let's see if I'll show that to you. Let's ask for the spin. Outside leg back. And he stepped up when I put that outside leg back. He wasn't thinking we were going to do anything hard. So that is my cue for a faster spin. You'll see some people kicking up front. What my experience is, if you have a horse that's really, truly soft and you start kicking up front, you're going to start inverting that horse's body, and he's not going to spin as fast as what he could spin if you would use engagement in the hip. Oh, thank you, Laura, for the super chat. Thank you.
And when you say ride more, does that mean lean forward?
When I say ride more, does that mean lean forward a bit? Do you got any context for that?
I think it was when you were talking about slow down the lope.
Okay, about a faster or slow lope.
I believe so. Mary's was
Okay.
yeah, and she also asked what's your slow down.
Okay, so when I want to go faster, I ride faster. When I want to go slower, I ride slower. My slow down cue is different for different horses. I get a lot of comments about his slow down cue. His slow down cue is the same as his canter departure cue. So it's going to sound contradictory, but I'm going to explain the process through to that. When you put your leg back in the hip, horse shifts his hip over, you smooch and you lope off. I would have just loped off in the left lead. I'm loping big, fast circles. When I want him to slow down, I give him the same cue with my outside leg, and I relax my body. What that does, that actually engages his back end so that when he does that slow down cue, he is really rounded and engaged. And if you saw the drill that I showed you about the downward transition exercise, trot, walk, and immediately trot, that's a body position that helps him make that slow down cue really good. And when I put leg back to lope off, he should not lope off until I smooch and ride the lope. So I can do some pretty neat stuff with him moving his butt around, because that outside leg back does not mean go faster. That outside leg back means move your hip over. So we can get some pretty neat movements. And that is actually his slow down cue. When I was teaching him his lead changes, he was falling out of lead and crossfiring in the back pretty bad. And I would run my circle through the middle. This, if you show a lot of reining horses, you're going to understand this. I'd run my circles, and when I wasn't asking for the lead change, sometimes he would still flip a lead the other way. So when I'm running my circles, if I'm running my big fast, we're riding and we're looking over here. That keeps him in lead going that way. If you ask for the slow down, and a lot of horses fall on their front end and slow down, they fall out of lead. So that helps keep him in lead, and that is actually his slow down cue. If you pull up the video of me showing in West Monroe with this last show and you watch, you will see we slow down and he pushes his hip in. It's pretty neat. That's how he works the best. I don't always use that with every horse. Sometimes it's just my body, but it has to be just like I said earlier. I'm going to show the horse however the horse shows best, and that's how he shows best.
That's all the questions, and you're at 15 minutes.
Okay, so that is all the questions I think I have so far. Um, that was some really good training questions. I appreciate. I thank you for joining me and asking some really good questions and some really good engagement. Really appreciate that. I think that's good for everybody, for me and all the viewers. We'll go ahead and wind it down and stop it. Again, this is Hank. I'll put a link up here to his playlist on YouTube. And I would suggest that you go look for the video of the last show I took him to, so you can see him working at a show. Pretty interesting to watch. Until next time, thank you for watching.